We are sitting in a cloud session, and you will hear a lot more about cloud. But first, I'd like to ask, what do you think about the current state of cloud? So we are sitting here, and most tech people are actually thinking about technologies that go beyond cloud. What's going to be the future architecture? At the same time, we do not necessarily use all the power of the existing cloud architectures. So our current presentation will be about ChemAxon's approach to how to solve the most frequent R&D data management problems that you have. Specifically the compound and assay data management. So the agenda, as János already told you, it's going to be three of us delivering the whole presentation. I'm going to start with a general introduction, plus I'm going to catch up a little bit on the compound registration topic that you've heard before the coffee break. Then Miklos will continue with our new tool for the assay data upload, and Lenka will wrap up the whole presentation discussing all the potentials of the query and reporting part. So why cloud? I know it's pretty late. We are in the middle of the cloud session, but why are we speaking about cloud that much? Is it just a buzzword, or there's some facts that actually support that it's going to be an important factor in our lives? First of all, I'd like to catch up a little bit on the history. So in the 1960s, we lived in a world where mainframes ruled the world. And then, eventually, everything turned into a decentralized something where everyone used software components on their PCs. Everything was pretty much disconnected, and the IT people had to deploy everything on an awful lot of PCs in order to make it work. And now we are essentially back to the 60s, with the exception that we call it cloud, and that it's working in a completely seamless way in an end user's perspective. And speaking of some facts, we need to admit that there's lots of factors that drive people towards the cloud. Like AWS prices decreased quite substantially in the previous 10 years. Well, as a result, the cloud computing revenues of the infrastructure providers, increased quite a bit, so they're happy to observe that, I guess. There are established cloud infrastructure players. We don't have to really think about that. They just exist, and we can use them. And there are many application implementation players as well, and hopefully ChemAxon will be on that list pretty soon. All in all, I think we can conclude that the R&D IT is essentially at the entry point of a large-scale adoption of cloud in their daily work routines. And it's not just a bold statement from me. So it was essentially the result of a study conducted last year by Clarivate Analytics on the actual state of the life science innovation field. Well, so much about cloud, but what do we serve on cloud? It doesn't really make sense to serve disconnected tools for the customers because they would need to integrate it within their workflows, and they would still need to put an awful lot of work in making them useful. If you think about the fact that we tend to use many different tools in our lives, like take this drone, for example. It's an amazing tool, but at the same time, it only delivers value if we put it into the appropriate context. Then it becomes useful. The same way, ChemAxon has quite a number of different web applications, tools that we can deliver to our customers in many different ways. And if you look at this image, then you can realize that many of these tools are actually connected with each other. The solid lines represent those connections that are the most frequently required by the customers and that we already have in place, fortunately. The dashed lines at the same time represent many more potential connections that might make sense in the future. At the same time, if you remember, yesterday in the partner presentation, I mentioned that ChemAxon certainly does not deliver all the tools that you might need in your daily workflows. So there's actually one box over there which does not belong to ChemAxon at the moment. We are more than happy to integrate third-party providers, ELN and inventory tools within this solution approach so that they become a little bit more interconnected with all the tools that we do provide. So what's the result? The result is that you've heard quite a lot about compound registration, for example, right before the coffee break. How do we put it into meaningful context? How do we make it much more useful for you? Well, if you think about the fact that you use compound registration typically for capturing compound data, then that's nice. But at the end of the day, you want to do something with the data. So we put a reporting tool behind the whole thing that would make it easy for the end user to interrogate the data within the compound registration system and to do the usual daily reporting stuff. But there's something missing. So it's nice to have compound data, but you typically end up with the related measured assay data as well. So we've included that one as well. And we integrated it in a way that the reporting tool will actually be able to use all the data aggregated from these two different data sources. And, well, the cloud image itself, certainly, this whole setup has been wrapped up in an environment called ChemAxon Synergy, as János introduced it, which is an entry point for the end users, where they would end up with their favorite tools for their specific needs, but at the same time, it would deliver a nice and smooth integration of these tools for their daily workflows. With that, I'd like to conclude the general intro section, and I'd like to invite Miklos to continue with the Assay data upload part.
So it was a while, it was a long time ago when I was on stage, so I'm happy to be here again. And in this middle part, I'm going to focus on the Assay data uploader part in the context of our Synergy solution. So if we log into Synergy, this is the screen that we can see. So I think this was already projected. So we have some tools like CompraEdge, Assay, and Connect, and some other things which may be needed for a company setup. So we can just focus on now the Assay, and we can start the work. Either we can go to the landing page of Assay, or we can start right away an Assay data upload. Or if we want to, we can just create some categories for the Assay uploads. All right, so let me tell you some details about how we started to develop this Assay product. So there was one hand driving force from the business. So when we got some requests from companies, they usually wanted to have more and more complete solutions, including the Assay domain characteristics. So this was one thing. The other one is that we already previously started to solve these kind of problems with the help of consultancy team. And we just thought that this is a recurring pattern, so we may start to develop a box product around this. So what kind of workflows the users may imagine when they need to upload data? It was quite interesting that there was no crystal clear one way how they want to do it. So the first, I will have three ways of upload that I will introduce to you today. And the first one is this one where the users wanted to have a full control over the process. So in this case, they usually start with an Excel file which contains a set of assay data. In this particular example, it's a cancer panel with a couple of cell lines and IC50 data. So this is processed assay data. And also, obviously, they want to capture those IDs which are related to these compounds. So they can just take this file, and this is the user interface where they can drag and drop the file. And then we got to this task details page. We consider every upload as a task. So here we can choose a project, for instance. And this is where I want to point out that our uploader is not just a simple uploader, because it also contains several integration points with the solution. So this is exactly what Csaba showed you a couple of minutes ago with some icons. So this is one integration point. We are taking the project details from Synergy. And we can, of course, add some details to the tasks, who did it, when the upload was performed, and so on. This probably can be still further expanded. And in the second step, this is another integration point where we check actually those IDs if they are present already in the compound registration. So this is a cross-check against the compound registration. If the compounds are registered, that's fine. If not, then those ones which may have to be checked manually, those are on the top. So one may go to compound registration, register the missing IDs, or fix some problems, if any. All right, so the next step, I think this is kind of the core concept of our Assay uploader. So the need here is to make the data somehow structured. And here we have three decision points. So we need to handle somehow these assay data. And the first one with the light blue, this is corresponding to some categories. But we call them procedures, but maybe we will just make it more generic, because it's not always the cell line. So maybe in some cases it can be just a biomolecule, or there might be other principles for keeping the data in one pile. The second decision point is that how the raw data was processed. So we want to keep that information. Okay, these particular numbers were measured on this cell line and were processed by this 5-parameter curve fitting algorithm. And the third one is just fixing the type of the data. So most often, okay, it's just numbers, or they can sometimes be text, or sometimes they can be images. So we can also support picture results and referring them by them URL. And if we store the pictures maybe on Google Drive or Ignite, that's going to be possible. All right, so these are this is a kind of triage which would make the data structured. So it's a very simple concept, and it's also very generic. All right, so if we are done with that, we can just push the button, confirm and save. And before that, maybe we want to review what we did. So this is a kind of overview page. All right, so that was it. That was the first part, when we have full control over the process. We showed it to the users, and of course, as you could realize, this is like 4 steps, and there are quite many things to do on the UI or do some decision points. So they just told that, okay, what if we can make it somewhat quicker? So for that, actually, we started to use this template concept. So if the users don't do that detailed, controlled work in the UI, then somebody has to do it elsewhere. So it can be done in a template. So this, you can realize some of the motifs, like this is for the task and project-related metadata. Here are the concepts for these triage, for these decision points, for experimental details, analytical details, and result type. So if someone fills in these details previously, then the upload can be quicker. So here is an example. This is a video about it. Single-click upload. And we have a little bit of onboarding helper for this. So if someone comes first time to this software, then it's easy to start with the software. So you can download the template. You have an example file as well. You can just either use the example file or fill in your own data, and you can quickly upload your first task. So that was kind of semi-automatic way of the upload. And when we finished this, then there were some people who told, okay, that's fine, it's nice, for one single file, it's already quick. What if you can make it for multiple files? So just make it more automatic. And we also did that. So you can imagine that you have somewhere kind of folder where you collect your files. So these files were generated quickly. These could also be generated maybe a NIME workflow or pipeline pilot, or just spit it out by an instrument in the format how we can digest it. So if you deploy these files to folder, the software would take care of it, would pick it up automatically, and that way actually we can have an automatic upload. And of course, this requires the proper format according to the template. It also requires some administrator setup. In this particular case, this is a Google Drive folder and some scheduler. So someone is starting the scheduler from that point. It will check regularly, like every 1 or I don't know 10 or 60 minutes. If there is any new content, it is uploading all the files. So here we go. We have all the files uploaded. We can check on the software user interface. All right. So now we have the Assay data in the database. But how can we access it? How can we read it or query or associate it with some other data, maybe with the complex capture data? So we have some data synchronization. We call this downstream mechanism. We have an adapter. So this is the piece which is delivering the data into the query and the reporting tool. And here you can see some further details about roles. So we have roles in Assay, which means that the standard users would be able to upload data to an existing protocol procedure. Administrators can, of course, set up the details for a protocol and set up the details for an automatic upload, for instance. And we have some overview for various features, who can do what, so that way everybody could see how the system is configured. All right, so that was my part. And now I am actually handing the ball to Lenka, who will show you how to search and query and report the data captured by Compreg and Assay. So it's yours.
So handing literally, thank you. My colleagues, early in the morning, my colleagues Roland and Norby spoke about the compound registration and the way how to register your novel data, your novel compounds. Right now, you heard from Miklos about the way how to register the results of Assay screenings. Csaba, before Miklos, spoke about the synergy, one platform, one place where you can actually see all these points and all the data. But why? Why did we actually dedicate so much time to talk about the registration tools? According to the survey performed by Crowdflower, among the data scientists, 60% of their time is dedicated to data cleaning. Collecting data sets is another 90%, but cleaning and organizing data is the 60% of the time. And if you ask them what is the least enjoyable part of the data science, it's exactly the part which is taking the most time, which is organizing and cleaning the data. So this is the reason why we have a separate tool, compound registration and the ChemAxon assay, to actually load the clean and standardized data into the system. So at this point, you have your data clean, standardized, and ready to be reported. Of course, you would like to create your workspace. You would like to search, filter, or analyze your data. You want to save or share the results of the analysis you created, and of course, other point, print or export. And you want to have this available anytime, and with all the data, clean data, which were actually registered either using the compound registration or the ChemAxon assay. In the upcoming slide, I want to show you examples. So this is our reporting tool. It's called Connect, and this is how your workspace can look like. What you can see here are data coming actually from the compound registration, like structure, parent ID, or in this part, molecular weight or cluster ID, stereochemistry details. At the same time, you have next to it the information from the compound registration about your assay data or screening results. And using this one workspace, I would like to highlight some of the features which might help you with analyzing the data. What you can notice is the conditional formatting. So if you want to use different coloring for lower, smaller than, it's possible. Another part, calculators. Here is shown the log P, log D molecular weight. However, there was a session about chemical eyes showing another calculators. So actually what is available from the calculators from a ChemAxon is possible to have here. I'm sorry, it has this little delay. Form views, so not only grid-like or spreadsheet-like option is available, but also if you like to have your structures on the left, on the right, in the form, it's available. The must is a data synchronization. So what you see here are actually 3 tabs, and when I click on one of the compounds, it's actually synchronized in all the 3 tabs. You have the same line there. External links. In this case, Campbell option. But if you have any of your URL either internal in the intranet or outside in the word Campbell, or it can be any other storage where you store the results, it can be linked, whatever, pictures, files, other links. Other options, shareable URL, so anyone who has an access to the platform of Synergy, which was mentioned, you can just generate the URL, send it to your colleague or collaborator, and he will see what you can see here. PDF exports and reports are a must, of course, but together with the form editor, it can be quite a powerful tool. For example, you can design your form in the way which corresponds to the reporting, and then you just run a query, saved query, for the results of the last 7 days. And whatever is searched, you will just export and get an instant PDF report. Of course, not only PDFs are supported, so you can see that the active structures or live structures in the Excel, pictures, SD files, and other formats are supported. Now we are getting actually to the new component of this reporting tool. We rejuvenated our charting capabilities. And what you can see here is a card view. It's customizable, so you can choose what you want to see on the card view in a chart. Or if you want to see it at all, you can also just turn off the option. With this one, I actually get to the point of the charting capabilities. So I will switch the print screen of the workspace, and this can be your workspace too. I switched this because we have currently three charting components here, and I want to introduce some of the features here as well. So what you already see was the card view. Another what we have is a curve fitting. So actually you can see here two curves. The first one, which is the fade out, is the original one. However, then I decided to take a rectangular data set in the middle, and the curve fit was recalculated. We, of course, synchronize not only the data within the forms, we synchronize also the charts. So what I did here is taking the rectangular part and fade out the rest of the points. It's, of course, promoted to the bar chart, and here in this scatter plot as well. Also, it limited the number of the hits, but you don't see the original number. What we have here is the point density. So if you are wondering how many points are actually in this area, or which area is the most attractive and crowded, this point density can help you to identify the point, the coordinates. This is not the only way we are actually, we show the point density. The other option is so-called hex beans. So the point density here showing you on the large data sets where is the point of the highest concentration of the points. Of course, when you start to zoom, it will go into the single points where you can actually dig deeper. And what you could already noticed on the previous slides is coloring. So in this case, it's a continuous coloring. On the previous, actually the first one, if you were carefully watching, there was a categorical coloring. So if you have even a strings, it doesn't have to be only a number, but it can be also a strings, and we will do a categorical coloring for you, or it will support. We have also coloring is another axis, and we have the option, it's like a third dimension, the coloring. And we have an option to change the dimensions. So if it ever happened to you that you created a chart and then you were wondering, oh, and what if this parameter would be on X or on Y, you can easily change it. It also means you can swap the axis, and of course you can change even the coloring parameter for a different one. Of course, still we are talking about everything is synchronized with these four parts of the dashboard. And the last point I want to highlight, which is the recent development, are structures or potentially R groups on the axis. So then you can actually, in this point again, fade it those which are not selected, but you can move and see the structures on the X. It's also possible to have structures on both axes, so you can do a partially like a SAR analysis on the graph. With this one, I would like to ask you to find these two people. One is there, and the one is there. These two people are actually those who developed or who are responsible for the features you saw here. Not all of us could be here, really. It's 3 of us now, 5 would be too much. So I will ask you to find them and give them a feedback. They will be very happy to hear that. And what's coming now? So the upcoming workflow. Now we're gonna have lunch. After the lunch, hopefully there will be a coffee with some cake. And at 1 p.m. we have a workshop. And the workshop will be focused on what was currently presented by Shayo, Csaba, Miklos, and me. So see you at 1 p.m. and we will be really happy if you will try on and share the experience with us and discuss what you think about that. Thank you.
You guys touched on picking up the files in an automated fashion from instruments. Do you have a way to configure the file formats that you support, or is it basically railroaded to the configuration, a basic plate like layout, or can you deal with tall, skinny tables? And because that's one thing I've seen is biologists bringing in new instrumentation that doesn't let you change the way it's outputting.
Behind you, you couldn't see it, but very slowly Miklos was like actually.
So we established now the way how we can pick up automatically files, but I think we still have a long road to go. So we are not there yet how you described it, but obviously that's a good direction. So now we can process or we can upload the process data only, and right now we cannot upload raw data or we cannot process the raw data on the fly. But that's the way.